good vibrations.
Well, it's a change of tack for today's episode, and it draws on what I had to say in my latest video of this past weekend, the one titled Nothing Can Stop What Is Coming. So in that video, I kind of went out of this experienced 3D reality in what I was talking about, the apparently physical world, into spiritual and metaphysical realms, and just considered what's playing out here in these times on those levels. And I wanted to do a show today that explores all of that. The guest that I've got on is Jonathan Halstead, who's the proprietor of Holistic Wellbeing, a business up there in Huddersfield, isn't it? West Yorkshire.
That's right, Mark, yes.
Welcome on, mate.
Thank you.
So you hosted an event that I did, what was it, about 3 years ago? A musical truth presentation based around my book. You had a little meet-up group there, and that's how we got to come together.
Yeah, it would be about 3 years ago, yeah.
That's right. And I was always aware that you've got this other side to you. Well, it's what you explore in your business, really. Your role as a psychic medium who is able to intuit and channel information from the spiritual realm, I guess, is probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
When did you first discover you had this gift, this aspect to yourself?
Came to me at the age of 30, totally out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it. And, it was a bit like a sledgehammer, really. Bit of an awakening for me, a spiritual awakening, certainly, at that time.
Had you been religious up to that point, or atheistic, or what was your sort of spiritual status?
Yeah, good question, because I had been brought up, I suppose, because of my age group, generation and everything, as a kid I kind of went to Sunday school, but then my parents became involved in the Jehovah's Witnesses. That was only for a few years. My mother decided after a few years that she'd had enough of it, really, and wanted to come out. But I was also brought up through early schooling in Church of England school. So I'd always kind of, suppose, had a religious background, or been in that environment. But it left me with a heck of a lot of questions to be asked and be answered, should I say. So kind of early teen years, spent a lot of time soul searching, trying to find out the truth. And it wasn't until I walked into a spiritualist church that truth began to be found.
So what happened to you at the age of 30? Was that like a sudden moment of epiphany, or was it a gradual process?
It was a sudden moment of epiphany, a kind of road to Damascus thing. My mother-in-law passed away very suddenly, between one Christmas and New Year. It turned out that my wife had a pact with her mum, apparently, and they'd said to each other that whoever went first, they would want to come back and communicate that they were okay. This was news to me, and my wife asked me, did I know of any spiritualist churches? And I was a salesman at the time, wandering around the streets of Halifax and Huddersfield, and happened to, at one point, come across a spiritualist church. It was a bit weird because it's really up a back street and nobody would generally tend to know where it is. You can't see it from the roadside. And that memory kind of came back to me that I'd seen this church. I said, yeah, go on then, I'll take you there if you want. So we did, and I was very intrigued by it all. It was all fairly new, although I must admit I've always had a great interest in anything like science fiction, the supernatural, and, of that ilk. And within a matter of weeks, that message had not come forth from my mother-in-law to Anne, my wife. But every week we went, I was sitting there right at the back of the room with my head kind of below the radar because I didn't want to be picked on. And every time a medium who was speaking for that evening would say, oh, the gentleman at the back with the beard, and my heart used to go and pound and everything. And anyway, that went on for weeks. Eventually, a medium came to me with a message one evening and said that I would be up here working with them. And I actually thought that meant that I was going to die and go to the spirit world. Thankfully, it wasn't. I'm still here to tell the tale, of course. And then perhaps another month later was when I gave my very first message, and that came to me in the form of a voice in my ear. I've never experienced anything like it. My wife put a hand up. The lady who ran the church said, yes, could you please stand up? She says, it's not me, it's him, and pointed to me. And in that very split second, Mark, I was trying to find any kind of excuse not to stand up and look a real fool. But I'll never forget the experience. It was as if somebody grabbed hold of my collar, lifted me up out of my chair, and I was stood on my feet giving this message about a man who had a shed at the back of his garden, and he was working with wood, and that was his favourite hobby. And it wasn't until the week after that the lady who ran the church ran over to me and said, Jonathan, I need to apologise. She says, I never spoke to you last week, but thank you very much indeed for bringing my father through. And that was how it all started for me, Mark.
So when you're communicated to by your spirit guides, do you get a voice in your head as if somebody's literally standing next to your ear and speaking it, or do the words just kind of appear in your mind without being audible?
Okay, yeah. A little bit of all three things. As a medium, I work on what I call three senses. Clairvoyance, which is the seeing. I think most people have heard of the clairvoyance side of it. Clairaudience, which is the hearing. And then clairsentience, which is feelings and emotions. And the messages I tend to receive from my current guides are generally clairaudience. So I'm usually hearing a voice in my ear.
So there's a lot of truth researchers trying to make sense of what's going on in these times in 2020. And many of them are all about dates, places, names, times, detail, documents, this kind of thing. They're what I call real-world truthers, rooted in this 3D reality. And many of them won't consider metaphysical influences and such, and I feel they're missing the major part of the picture here in not going into those realms, because there's far more going on in these times than just, vaccines and COVID figures and World Economic Forum, Great Reset plans and all this. Would you generally agree with that notion?
I would, yes. There's still a lot of aversion to accepting what we do, and I suppose quite rightly so, really, because people are looking for the truth. And I always say to people, any skeptic, well, everything that I do, I cannot prove it to you. Yeah, it's impossible to be able to prove what I do. It's something that I've been developing over the last 25 years, and between you and me, Mark, and believe me that if I didn't feel as though there's any truth in it at all, I wouldn't be doing it. I would certainly have brushed it aside a long time ago. But I've seen too much evidence, too much proof for myself. Brought that evidence through for other people who've come back to me and said, you know what, that was absolutely spot on. So it's one of those things that until science catches up, and thankfully it is doing a wee bit through quantum physics, quantum mechanics, etc., that one day I'm sure we'll find the proof for this and how it all works. But I do have to accept at the moment that, a lot of people out there wouldn't accept it or are a little bit sceptical of it, and that's quite all right by me. I just go on what I know and what I feel, and as long as people keep saying to me, well, that resonates, then I'll continue to do it.
Sure. So it's a leap of faith to a very large extent.
It can be a leap of faith, and if anybody goes through mediumship training, one of the big things we have to learn to do is trust, and build up our confidence, by continuing to do the work as well. So, that trust's a big thing. But as I say, personally, I've seen the evidence put before me. I mistrusted it. I disbelieved it. And then it came right, so I thought, okay, shut up, and get on with it, really.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've found is that I've been doing a lot of what people would refer to as praying. Obviously, that's got religious overtones to it, and I don't adhere to any of the orthodox religions. But, I mean, another way of expressing it would be an intention prayer, or, just casting out your will or your intent. I've been doing that all year in terms of putting out there into the universe what I wish to see manifest. And I was having a conversation with my wife about this earlier today, actually. I feel that sometimes you can get too intense with that whole process, and you have so much invested in the outcome that you wish for playing out. And I've found, it's been my experience, that when you put it out there and then let go of it, let go of all attachment to the outcome, and just go about your business, often that's when the results come to you, rather than when you so want it to happen so intensely, and you often find yourself disappointed that it's not happening then. So if you can just be able to put it out there and leave it to the gods, to nature, whatever, that's often when the results come. That's been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many people in the world right now who think they can't do anything about it, about the situation. And this has been a big topic of conversation for me and around me this week, is that, or this last week or two, that we can do something about it. And what you're doing there, Mark, you're practicing basically we'll call it meditation. Yeah. The power of thought is quite incredible. And we do not give any scientific credence, I feel, to investigating the power of thought. And they talk about the power of, or the speed of light. Well, I believe that the speed of thought is infinitely faster than the speed of light, because thought is consciousness. And we are all connected by this consciousness, and it's what links us together. So we have to remember that when we put a thought out there into the universe, it becomes a live thing. It becomes a reality. Human beings, in my experience, whether people wish to believe this or not, but we are creators. We'll even go as far to say we are creator gods. We are absolutely amazing beings that sadly have been suppressed by other beings that wish for us not to use our amazing abilities. And so even if someone's sitting in a flat, we talk about lovely meditations that are in the middle of a forest, but you might not be able to get out into a forest. If you're in a flat, and you sat there in your one room or your two rooms or whatever, you can sit in an armchair, you can tap into the greater consciousness field. And once you tap into that through really the power of meditation and the power of thought, really then you can begin to change the world. And people don't realise that we've got this power. You've realised that, Mark. And it sounds weird, but you hit the nail on the head. Be passive about that, because the more that you want something, you're actually putting up a block, what we call a psychic block. So think the thought and let it go, yeah? And if you imagine that we all start doing that across the world, how much power that's going to create. If we put positive thoughts out into the world for healing, for compassion, for love, for bringing unity as well, because unity is the big thing for me at the moment. Unity between ourselves in humanity. That if we can manifest that, and I'm pretty sure that we can, imagine what difference we can make just by sitting in our armchair at home, rather than thinking that we're powerless, which we aren't. We have so much power, divine power, that we can really put that to good use.
Bruce Lipton has got a lot of good work on the power of the mind to create, the biology of belief, he calls it. And also, when you get into the Kybalion, the Hermetic Principles, the 7 Hermetic Principles, I think the first one of those is all is mind, the universe is mind. Everything starts off with a thought, with it being imagined into creation. And a couple of good examples I've been given are, you're sitting in your house right now, I'm sitting in mine. These houses would not exist if an architect hadn't dreamed up the plans and imagined what that house would look like. And then the builders come in and fulfill his vision, And even when it comes down to us being here and our families, I've got kids, and those kids only exist because my wife and I made the decision in our minds to procreate. So everything starts with a thought and an intent. Absolutely.
Yeah. We go back to the creation evolution thing, and the age-old argument, because I'm pretty sure they'll probably rock that one out before long as well, because it's another point of division, of course. But everything has to start with a thought. Absolutely, Mark. And if anybody's studied sacred geometry, and I'll say I'm not an expert, but I have looked into it, the the basis of sacred geometry starts with the point of the compass on the paper, the single dot, the singularity. Okay, and when you start to move the compass, you create the duality. So from one point to another. And so everything is in my experience, created. And this is where I come back to the fact that, I truly believe that we are creator gods. We have an amazing ability. We do not understand that ability because we are educated into a system which tells us, or doesn't tell us, should I say, that this is who we are and what we are. And there have been so many religious leaders that have come into this world. And when I say religious, I mean spiritual leaders, because I always say that religion and spirituality are two completely different concepts. And if we call them spiritual leaders, the higher ascended masters, call them what you want, they've all brought the same message. They've all said to us, look, the way that we change the world, the way that we can actually change things is to look within. And by looking within, meaning meditation, we can begin to make those changes. And so, yes, we really need to explore that. Many people now, through our centre and many other centres across the country and across the world, are really kind of hammering home the power of meditation. There was if you don't mind me just saying this, but there was a study, and I'll for the life of me, can't remember where I found it, which is a bit disappointing. I was hoping that I might find it for you today, but it's probably out there on the internet somewhere, of a study that was done in America somewhere of a city which aimed to reduce its crime statistics, the amount of crime. And a group got together, I think there may have been about 20 or 30 people that sat down and really put the thought out there to reduce the crime statistics, and it actually worked. So it might be useful for listeners to try and look that one up. I'm certainly going to look it up anyway, because I'd like to see that again. Sure. But yeah, power of thought, definitely. That's where we need to be right now.
Reminds me of a story that I heard connected to Dr. Masaru Emoto, the Japanese guy that did experiments with water, determining that water had consciousness. And apparently in one of his experiments, a group of people linked arms around a lake which was highly polluted, and they all put their intention into the water being made pure and clear, and focused on that in a meditative state, and managed to change the condition of the water from polluted to clear and pure. So there's another example of that in action. Yes.
And for a personal example for me was taking that on board, because that, again, the skeptics out there, the rubbish and him saying he's not a real doctor and all this, well, good luck to him, It's like, to me, we should be working together, not trying to split each other apart by different beliefs and concepts. But I used to take, I sometimes suffer with acid reflux, and one particular night I thought, oh, I'll have a glass of water, whether that was the right thing or a wrong thing to do, before I went to bed. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bless this water, and I'm going to try and change its properties. Because after reading Masaru Emoto, we're talking about water holding memory, and of course crystals do the same, and that is scientifically proven, by the way. And I blessed the water and asked this water to heal me as it went into my body through all the different cells in my body. And you know what? It worked. I was quite astounded. And I shouldn't have been, but it did. But, we can change things. The power of the mind is incredible.
Well, you must have been doing that the right way, because I've been praying and putting out the intention for Bill Gates to be jailed all year. I guess I must be wanting it too much.
I think, I know we had a very brief conversation, didn't we, before, and mentioned that is it a good thing to be probably one of the most hated men on the planet right now, and imagining all that derision being poured over your head, from all these different sources. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't want to be him, let's put it that way, Mark, and I think that everybody knows in their heart of hearts that this is all going to be exposed. It is there is evidence for that now. There is evidence for a massive awakening across the globe. I believe this vaccine thing is the one that's really going to kind of wake up a lot more people up once they realise, what's actually in it as well, which is interesting. And
which has now come out and been made public knowledge.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Okay, if the vaccine works and it doesn't harm the body, then that's fine by me. However, what we're not being told is what's the interesting part of it, and it's everything that's emitted from the truth radar, and of course, this is having an amazing effect on the world because the more imposition that these people try to put upon us, the more freedom they try to take away from us as a race of beings. The actual amazing genius effect of that is that more and more people are waking up to it and seeing above the illusion, which is just absolutely wonderful.
Well, that's right. It's unavoidable. And that's a good segue point into the main topic of discussion, which is many psychics, mediums have talked of us approaching a major shift in human consciousness and entering a new era, a new paradigm. And so many of them are pinpointing the winter solstice of this year, 21st of December, as the time when that's going to happen. And what many of them are saying is that if they're able to intuit that this is on the way, then the evildoers, the cabal, will doubtless have their own psychics or their remote viewers or whatever who would also have been able to tap into that knowledge, and they know that this is coming. And that would be the reason why they're panicking and in desperation now, feeling that they're about to be exposed and their days are numbered. They're throwing everything they've got at us. And doesn't it feel like that's been happening this year? It's just been absolutely ridiculous the way the tyranny and all this horrific stuff has been piled all on top of each other, week after week after week. And in recent weeks, it just seems to have reached really desperate levels where every day we're hearing something new about how our rights and freedoms are going to be taken away, or our lives are going to become more controlled, or all these horror stories that are happening. So it appears to be a very complicated interplay between the timelines playing out in this physical reality through the passage of linear time, and being able to view this from a higher perspective in another realm. And it seems like there are two or more potential timelines waiting to play out. One in which the controllers, the evildoers, get their way, and the other in which humanity takes back its power and puts down the evil. And it seems they feel as if the second one there is about to play out, and they're desperately trying to change it into the first one.
I absolutely agree with that, yeah. Talking about timelines is very interesting as well, because, we're going back to the meditation thing again, and when we meditate, we actually take ourselves out of human time. If anybody's truly meditated and had a beneficial experience from it, it's almost as if time's gone nowhere when you come back into the room that you've been meditating in. Because once you take yourself away from the human physical consciousness and into the spirit consciousness, which is what meditation achieves for us, is that time becomes irrelevant. And not only does it become irrelevant, but it actually allows us to, if you call, let's say, see into the future, Because, again, something I've learned over the years is that time itself is concurrent or causal, as a scientist friend corrected me on one time, an astrophysicist. And that's actually agreed with, I believe, in the quantum mechanics field, which surprised me greatly, because here I am talking to an astrophysicist about spiritual stuff, and thankfully he's a wonderful man who's happy to embrace any concept, which really I hope that most scientists will start to do that before long, with one of my great heroes, Nikola Tesla, who really brought that together. And we all know what happened to him if you've done his research on him, is what I'm trying to say. So taking yourself out of that time constraint helps us to see ahead, or to receive the information or feelings of what might come to be. And there's this a psychic war being going on, and as you rightly pointed out there, Mark, that the energies, and anybody who really works with energy, or comes to learn to work with energy, will know that the energies have been absolutely intense, and it's been like one huge emotional roller coaster ride. People 1 minute are feeling on top of the world, and then the next day you just crash and you just want to just hide your head under the duvet and not even bother getting up on a morning.
That's me.
We've all been there.
Or reach for a length of rope, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And how many people have thought about taking their lives, and how many people have even done that kind of final step and taken their lives, which is tragic. But if we could all look at things more in a spiritual sense, it will begin to give us hope, because we know full well that it's been prophesied from year dot that the world, through the Bible, through any religious kind of text, that there'll come a time when the earth ascends once again. That we go through this time of being completely enslaved. But this time will come, and where we will be emancipated, if you like. And my main guide at the moment, who happens to be called Phoenix, has spoken of this many times, and first came to me with this information in 2009, and began speaking, if I can get my teeth in, began speaking about a time when we would see this emancipation take place, this what he classed as the great freedom of mankind. And I'll try and be politically correct, and say humankind. But they tend not to be politically correct, by the way, don't spirit guides, so apologies. But what I want to say is that humankind, I'll rephrase it to that, is going to go through this ascension period. And come what may, that will happen, yeah? And the powers that be, the controllers around us who control, the controlling forces of the world, actually know that they're on a sticky wicket. And through desperation, as you mentioned, that they are now trying any method possible to try and force us into more and more levels of control. I believe climate change is one of the next things on the agenda. I'm not too sure about that. I've been hearing about that, that they're going to start using that cookie on us again, another great thing to divide us with.
Well, there's always the fake alien invasion if all else fails as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's going to be the last choice, Mark, but who knows. But the spiritual message is that hang in there, hang in there, it will happen, okay? It's difficult really to put that across to anybody who's in a state of fear at the moment, or whose emotions are running very high, and I have to remind myself, even with what I know and what I feel, I have to remind myself pretty much every day that that's exactly what's going to happen, and we're all working towards a better future for this planet, and all the inhabitants, and that includes not just humanity, but the plant life, the ocean life, and the animal life. And in our heart of hearts, I'm pretty sure that we all know that what we've been doing is wrong. We cannot continue to live our lives subject to political oppression anymore. We're just not. Human beings have been programmed to believe in this, but yet there's this little spark of spirit within each and every one of us, this divine spark that is kind of saying to us, hang on, no, there's a better world than this, we can do better than this, humanity is better than this. And, we've got to work on that. We've got to work, every single one of us now has got to work on focusing on that. Uniting rather than being divided politically. That's going to be a tough one, I know, for many people, but we've got to rise above politics now. Politics does not work. It never did work. It only ever worked against us, and along with religion in many respects. But we've got to find that common ground now to work on as a race of beings who wish to inhabit this planet, to work with it in harmony, and to live our lives freely.
That's right. You mentioned Nikola Tesla there, and one of the individuals that was responsible for clearing out his records and his work and all his experiments and stuff after his death just happened to be the uncle of Donald Trump. Brings things interestingly sort of up-to-date and topical when it comes to Tesla's work. But anyway, so the evildoers must not believe that it's a done deal just yet, that humanity is going to evolve to this next sort of stage in our consciousness and we're going to put down evil and tyranny. They're obviously throwing out all this stuff at us because they still believe in their desperation that they can win in their sick, diseased mindset.
Yeah, it's almost like I liken it to a stuck record. You'll remember records, won't you, Mark? Those things that you used to put on a turntable.
I'm surrounded by them in my room right now.
Fantastic. They're like books, really, aren't they? You know, they've got that kind of organic feel to them.
Oh,
you know?
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, love vinyl.
And obviously the album art that used to go with it as well. But yeah, they are literally on a vibration, on a frequency level, which does not allow them to see their own divinity. Because at the end of the day, even the evildoers are divine, yeah? We've got to remember that even the evildoers have a divine spark within them. But they've become so entrenched and cut themselves off so far from that divine spark that they, number one, don't probably believe that anymore, you know. Number two, they're just lost in this sea of life is what is beyond or just right in front of your nose.
They seem to have that divine spark bred out of them, don't they? Because they're turned into psychopaths.
Yeah.
My research has shown that from young childhood, many of these, well, pretty much all of these new generational bloodlines are put through trauma-based mind control and satanic ritual abuse. And it causes them to just become psychopaths, devoid of empathy and compassion as they grow up. And that which has been done to them, they just carry it on and do it to others. And it just shuts them off from that divine aspect of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure that that's what they're trying to achieve with the rest of humanity right now. But there's this little thing fighting back within us, you know. And again, my guide Phoenix said to me in March, when this all started kicking off, that Spirit wished to speak through humanity now. You know, they wish to speak through us. They wish to use our bodies, our voices, our feelings, our writing abilities to be able to get that message out there into the world. Because they cannot manifest in this vibration. It's far too low for them. You know, it's like that magnet thing that, you know, the opposite, is it the opposite poles of the magnet or the positive and positive it repels? Sorry, my science might be a bit flaky on that one.
I know what you mean.
But it's kind of, they can't come here, they can't lower their vibration enough to be able to manifest. And that's why mediums exist. We're all mediums, by the way, Mark. Every single one of us has this ability to communicate across dimensions and across space, regardless of time or distance. And one day I'm going to love to find out how it actually works, but it's kind of, this is how we're going to do it. They're going to speak through us. They are doing. When you stand up in your protests and you stand up on stage, you're probably finding that you're getting kind of taken over a little bit, and these words are coming out of your mouth, and you might even be thinking in your mind, stepping back, thinking, "Wow, I didn't kind of know that was going to come out."
Absolutely,
you know?
I've made that comment that often I get up there on a stage, and it's like the words and the messages are flowing through me. They're coming from somewhere. I'm channeling them. And I can listen back to a recording and think, wow, where did that come from? That was profound.
Yeah.
It's come from somewhere.
Well, both myself and my wife, we sat down, listened to your podcast, and I just said at the end of that, I said to Anna, that's the truth. Yeah, that is the truth. You know, and this is what's happening. The truth is coming through us. So we've got to be conscious, or become conscious, that we are these conduits for information. We're amazing. You know, our DNA is that. What DNA is? It's the physical conduit of our divinity, of our kind of whole conscious being, both in terms of spirit and in terms of physicality, all combined into little strands of DNA that build our world build our bodies, but also connect us with the higher consciousness. So it's just beautiful. The whole thing is beautiful. And to deny that fact and to deny that knowledge, which these people, I believe, are doing, they are totally sold on the fact that everything is physical. All response is physical. Everything is and in psychology terms as well, from the brain, because in those terms the brain is just it's a machine. It's controlled by hormones, by electrical impulses, which it is, don't get me wrong, but we always leave out the spiritual aspect of everything, the actual consciousness part of it, which no scientific instrument right at this moment in time can measure. And that's why we preach this message to the world, and through our education system, that we talk about evolution. We're just this kind of thing that came from a pond and evolved into this. And you know what, Mark? If this is what we've evolved into, then God help us, really. Because if this is the pinnacle of evolution, what the hell has gone wrong, And, we are so much more than this, but these beings cannot rise above that because of their frequency. And Tesla talked about frequency, the importance of frequency. And he said, I think he even mentioned that frequency, once we begin to understand frequency and vibration, okay, then we'll really begin to understand the universe. Because we talked about sacred geometry, but we also need to talk about sound and the effect of vibration on everything in terms of a consciousness sense. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up wanting to go into sound healing, because I woke bolt upright in bed one day and just shouted out, I need to be a sound healer. And being a musician and loving music, I thought, well, if I can use that sound to heal people, then how amazing would that be? So we're so locked into this kind of consciousness trap, that's been put upon us from birth, through schooling, through university, through life, really, to just be born, to live, to work, and then hopefully retire with some money that you might be able to enjoy the last years of your life, and then die. And then, according to the the ones that don't kind of connect with the cosmic consciousness and higher consciousness, well, once you're dead, you're dead. So what really has been the point of life if we want to go through this life being in fear, being controlled by others who are exerting their will over us, and doing that by fear and threats? Well, that's not the world that I want to live in, and I'm sure it isn't with you, Mark, or most people in this world.
That's right. I had another lyric come into my head as you were speaking there. These song lyrics just come to me. I seem to channel songs. And there's a lyric in John Lennon's Instant Karma where he says, "Why on earth are we here? Surely not to live in pain and fear. Why on earth are you there? Well, you're everywhere. Come on, get your share." And he knew what he was talking about when he was writing that song, for sure. So, we can do better, and we are going to do better as humanity. I'm convinced of it. Have you had any specific communication from your guides then as to this new paradigm that's said to be coming in? I mean, a lot of astrologers and a lot of commentators on this are saying that this is the true age of Aquarius, which is about to come in. Nobody's ever been able to pinpoint exactly when these zodiacal ages begin and end. They're always very approximate, and sometimes people disagree by matters of centuries as to when they're going to come in. But many people seem to feel that we're on the cusp of the age of Aquarius, and that's what we're going to see ushered in at the winter solstice this year. Have you had any communications to that effect from your guides, putting dates on it and such?
Not anything specifically relating to that, but little snippets, I would say, that have come through. And there is certainly, I feel very strongly that there is certainly a meaning to the solstice, okay? I'm not just saying any solstice, there is, but this particular one is particularly meaningful because of the cosmic alignments that are going to be taking place, the conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter. And I am very much a believer that the cosmos, the universe, is a big machine, and that every single movement of the planets and the stars do determine the outcomes of our physical reality. Some people would call that astrology. I tend to agree with that. I'm not an astrologer. I love the idea of it, but I'm nowhere near qualified to talk about it. But it's kind of going along with that. I received some information, and it was some of the weirdest information I've received in recent times. By the way, excuse me, I'm just having trouble with my throat at the moment. In recent times, the information that I generally get is from Guide Phoenix. But one evening, just recently, I got this information from, and still to this day, I have no idea where it's come from. But it was very interesting. It was weird in the sense that it spoke of astronomical things and also binary code as well. And they gave me a string of binary numbers. If anybody's interested in this stuff, you can go on the Holistic Wellbeing website onto our blog, and you can check out most of the writings that I receive from my guides. But would I be okay to kind of read some of that out, Mark, here? Is that possible?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, okay, so strap yourselves in. But one thing I received recently, back on the 10th of September, that kind of made me think a little bit was, they started off by saying, a very powerful web of deceit has been spun around your planet. It is of the finest filament, and one which many cannot see or feel. It can be likened to a thin veil. It appears subtle, but heavily disguises the truth which lies behind it. And that goes on to talking about how humanity has become almost like in a zombie-like state, yeah? And about how the human brain is programmed to respond to commands, which I'm pretty sure we are. And it's a genetic trait. They mentioned it's a genetic trait which has been bred into the human genome.
That would explain why everyone's obediently walking around in masks and distancing and all this kind of thing, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And they ask us to understand that duality exists in all things like day and night, and duality exists for the purpose of learning about balance, harmony, and mastery of the ego. They went on to say that the human brain can be programmed to become subservient, but the soul cannot. And there lies within a great conflict. And this is what we're going through right now, Mark, in the awakening. Because the brain is programmed to accept this stuff, but the soul saying, hang on, no, this isn't right. It's like our kind of emergency stop button, yeah? And they said that the DNA and the brain can be programmed to accept the signals received from external sources. And science dictates that it's a combination of the brain, DNA, and chemical processes which control the human. So, in part, that's true, of course. You know, if anybody's done biology or basic biology or even advanced biology, they'll know that that is true. But in the spiritual environment, they wanted to say was a trinity exists. And in the human, the heart makes up the trinity and is the connection to divine source. And over eons, humanity has cut itself off from the divine source, very much of what we spoke about, you know, with the powers that be that are controlling us. And they've just narrowed it down to the fact that we only work on functions of the brain, DNA, and chemical processes. You know, we're just kind of these lumps of meat hulking our way around the planet, basically, with no real idea of where we're going. And any other process in science has just been completely dismissed. You know, any spiritual aspect of that, it's like, oh, well, you're pseudoscience or you're a nutter or whatever you want to call people, you know. But they're saying that the signals from the heart are not measurable by scientific equipment because the heart is very powerful. And it won't form any basis of scientific study because we just don't have the equipment to measure this stuff yet. The DNA, okay, is responding to subtle frequencies. And these subtle frequencies can actually take control and begin to, we can begin to unwittingly attune to them, which is what we're doing. We've been completely mind controlled from the 23rd of March to accept this stuff, and...
So something's got to account for the fact that, while the vast majority of people do seem to be obeying all these immoral and ridiculous government dictates, there's still a significant proportion of people that can see through the bullshit, and they can see it's a big scam, and they realise we're being put on, and they're not having any of it. And that number is growing by the day as more and more people, what we describe as wake up. So it seems these people that can see through the scam must be more attuned to their higher self, to their spiritual side, which sees and knows all, more so than being rooted in their material aspect, which is, that lump of meat that you said you're just hulking around and it seems to have no purpose and no direction. So It seems some people are more leaning towards one aspect of themselves than the other.
And a harsh reality is that not everybody's going to wake up, I would love for the whole world to wake up personally, but I know in my heart of hearts that not everybody's actually meant to go into this consciousness that we're walking into, this higher consciousness.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It's just that within their spiritual progressive path, it's not on the agenda just at this moment in time.
They've made that choice for themselves to live a life in ignorance of truth because it, in some way, it aids their spiritual journey.
Absolutely, yeah, because everything that we do, everything is an experience. It's a conscious experience. And we talked about changing the world, and how we do that is we change our perception of the world. And if we have that ability to be able to change our perception of the way that we look at something, then the world takes on a whole new meaning, And many of us who are in the truth movement or spiritual or whatever it is, we've all been somewhere and found that point, that connection. And I found that with David Icke. And the thing that really started me thinking was when he started putting in his books about symbols that used by the corporations, and that completely switched me onto this whole thing, So it was just one little thing that kind of switched a trigger, and I believe this is what's happening now with our DNA. As these waves of energy are coming towards the planet, and we keep talking about the 21st of December, I really feel as though we're building up to this point now where it's almost like irreversible. Once the DNA has been altered, we can't go back to that previous world or previous life, if you like, because we'll have raised our consciousness to a much higher frequency. So, we've got to begin to start listening to our inner selves, looking within for the answers rather than looking without, for crying out loud, turn off the TV and any form of piece of information that does not serve us anymore or feels wrong or is negatively transmitting, frequencies that are not in harmony with the human being. So this is the kind of message from the guides about looking within, looking in the heart, knowing that we've got this amazing transmitter and receiver through the heart of this information that can be achieved by meditation, and they're very keen for us, like I said, to want to connect with that now. So the other thing I was going to mention, if you don't mind, I'm hoping I'm not going to run you over time, Mark.
No, you're fine. Go on.
But this was the communication I received a couple of weeks ago that I found quite odd. It was a little bit like Star Trek in how they signed off when they gave the information, and I believe now, that what they're talking about here is the solstice. Yeah, they started off by saying the cosmos aligns to play its part in bringing about the perfect conditions for the ascension of the Earth and all its inhabitants. And the alliance is waiting with bated breath. I have no idea, by the way, Mark, who the heck the alliance is, yeah? But there must be somewhere. Perhaps it's a bit of a Star Wars thing, I don't know.
A lot of mediums talk about a galactic federation of light. I don't really know what that is, but it's a term that I hear used a lot. I don't know if that would be this alliance.
Yeah, well, I've certainly read up on that. I've had communication and contact with these people, and there certainly seems to be a lot of truth in Star Wars, by the way, between the forces of evil and forces of good, like with the Rebel Alliance, etc. And there are forces of good out there that are working to help us with the ascension. And I believe that that's what this communication is. They talked about the scaled-skinned ones, whether you believe in that or not. But their anger and contempt is being felt by the inhabitants of the earth because they've been brought to a point of submission, and I thought that was wonderful. That these mighty beings that allegedly roam the universe, spreading their fear and whatever total contempt for anything else, have now been brought to a point of submission. I believe what that means is by these people, this alliance. And they wrote, "How the mighty fall." I love that. Their refusal to ascend is anathema to us. So they really cannot believe why these beings refuse to ascend. So they talked about planet Mars and the conjunction of the Sun. Now, I look back and I fact-checked that one, and that happened on the 13th of October this year. They said it's at its zenith and the frequencies can begin to be transmitted now. This will arrive like a wave over the earth. Be prepared in your energy body to withstand the emotional tsunami which is about to hit. And I feel as though that's like what we're going through right now, Mark. Sure. We ask you to remain steadfast while we remove any remaining remnants of the existence of the scaled ones. Again, that's music to my ears. We will begin to remove foreign bodies from the skies and within orbit which are deemed subversive. So if you think about all the satellites and everything that are overhead and the things that we've no idea what's going on up there. And then they said, we ask you to consider the balance of metals within your bodies and that zinc is of utmost importance at this time. Zinc allows us to transmit frequencies which will begin to cleanse any foreign objects within the body, which have been placed there for subversive reasons of control and communication. A sweep will take place at the sun's azimuth of 28 degrees to the horizon. Now, that meant nothing to me. I checked it out, and it related to a time of Huddersfield time of 3:50 a.m. Yeah? And then people wrote back to me and said, oh, wow, I've been waking up at 4 o'clock and wondering why,
Me too.
And then they said that and this is the interesting bit, the nodes have been activated in anticipation of the ascension. I am not 100% sure what the nodes are, but I believe that some of the great sites, the stone circles, pyramids, things like that across the globe, I've always spoken about those as being nodes, but I believe there's also nodes out there in the cosmos as well. So now they said, all nodes are now transmitting and will be ready for when the signal is given to overturn the barrier which has been put in place to feed off the fear energy of humanity. Now, this was going back to the previous one I mentioned, I believe, where they talked about a web of deceit, being put around the earth. And then they said, this is a very clever one-way system, allowing only fear energy to be reflected back toward earth. Yeah? So that kind of blew my mind as well.
How do we overcome that?
Well, this is it. Well, I think they're trying to tell us that that's exactly what they're trying to achieve now, is to remove that system, barrier. So once control has been established, the next phase will begin. And then they gave me a binary data reference with binary numbers. And then they signed off by saying transmission complete, and that was the Star Trek bit for me. I thought that's classic kind of Star Trek talk, is that. So what I did after that, I thought about it, and I've studied a little bit of numerology, not a great deal, but enough to keep my interest in it, and I feel there's a lot in numerology, by the way. And I converted that, using the internet, into a decimal or decimal numbers. So they gave me 2 strings of binary numbers. I converted it to decimal, and the decimal came out as the numbers or number 111, 111, and 3549. Now, in numerology, the way you kind of work that out is you start with the first numbers. So 1 plus 1 plus 1, that's the 111, equals 3. And then the 3 plus 5 plus 4 plus 9 equals 21. So you then add the results of those together, and you get the number 6. Okay? So 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals 6. So I looked up the numerological meaning of that, of the number 6, and it means unconditional love, healing, nurturing, compassion and empathy, and represents the energy of Mother Earth. So that kind of blew my mind, really. So I hopefully, just to impart that for the listeners, if they find that interesting. But I believe, in answer to your question, I get there in the end, Mark, you might get that by now, is moving up to that solstice period. I believe that there will be a major cosmic shift, and this is what these people or beings are talking about. Yeah.
I just want to read out a message that I got from Nicola Tesla. He emailed me this morning, and he's happy for me to read it out. It's to do with all of this, so let me just read what he wrote. He says, about the big prediction you've bravely come out with, well, it's just me relating what mediums have been saying, really. I asked my partner about it. He says she's an astrologer. Jupiter and Saturn meet at 0 degrees of Aquarius a week after the solstice, so they will be together on the solstice. Every 200 years, this conjunction moves into a new element, the 4 elements earth, air, fire and water. So it's now moving into air for the first time in 800 years. So traditionally that means some sort of big change in history. At the solstice these days we get the galactic alignment when the sun at 0 degrees Capricorn is crossing over the galactic equator that is the middle line through the Milky Way. This happens once every 13,000 years. And an interesting thing is that I've been listening to a lot of psychics and mediums and even tarot readers from all far-flung corners of the world. So some of them are in Australia, some might be in South America and, the USA, all over Europe, in Asia, and they're all pretty much coming with the same message. They're all saying that they're intuiting that there's this major shift on its way round about these dates we've been talking about. They all seem to correlate what each other is saying. Nobody's coming with anything that differs from that. So it does indicate that there could well be something to all this.
Yeah, you mentioned the word faith, earlier on, and so it's kind of keep the faith, but we've also got to have an element of trust in that as well, and know that we are on this ascension pathway, and we've been on it for so many years now, and it's really kind of coming to that culmination, and we mentioned about the energies and how you felt it, I felt it, millions across the globe of feeling these intense energies, might not be able to put our fingers on it, the emotional roller coaster ride that we're going through right now. My guides have spoken about that, multiple guides, as you say, Mark, when you look into what other people are saying across the globe. There seems to be this common message coming out, yeah? And this is how they are speaking through us, by giving us this information, this common message. And the way that we're going to kind of work towards this is to unify. We need desperately now humanity to unify and rather be divided, because they are just trying any division method possible. We've even got down to, a few weeks ago, down to the north-south divide. It even got to those stakes again, And yeah. I'm thinking, oh, come on, they really are kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
Yeah.
And
all by design.
If we can rise above the political thing, because politics is just their vibration, That is a vibration that we need to kind of crawl our way out of now. We're not left, we're not right, we're actually humanity, we're human beings. And deep down, we all want the same result. We all want to be able to live our lives in freedom, yeah, and enjoy life, And but there are beings out there and beings in power above us who are trying any means possible to not allow that to happen, because they know that when that happens, we will have truly awakened and we will no longer have to work on their frequency.
And that is what most people want. They just want to live freely. They've got no interest in doing any harm. They've got no interest in dominating or controlling anyone else. It reminds me of this great speech by Charlie Chaplin in the movie The Great Dictator. Maybe I'll put the link in the show notes below to where you can get that speech on YouTube, because it's incredible. You know, it's from God knows how many decades ago, but he's saying, you know, I don't want to control or dominate anyone. I just want to help people. Human beings are like that. That's our inherent nature. So I can't imagine what motivates these evildoers to just want to control everything and put everyone down. And they just spend their entire lifetimes just trying to dominate others. And we just aren't interested in that. It doesn't even occur to us. We just want to live freely, enjoy life with our families and pursue what we enjoy doing and all this. They really do feel like they're of a different breed to us altogether. Not even human.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And that speech by Charlie Chaplin, that film, by the way, was it The Dictator? It was
The Great Dictator. It's awesome speech.
Yeah, is amazing. You know, what he says in that, it makes the kind of hairs on the back of your neck stand up when you listen to him.
Absolutely.
And, you know, but again, we're going back to that vibration level, Mark, that frequency level with these beings. You know, we're even talking about soul removal. You know, if you look into the kind of far-flung reaches of all this, we're even talking about soul removal, the ability to remove a soul from a body and replace it with another. And that's a concept that was put to me many years ago through a book, and I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of the book was. I've even tried to find it, but I cannot find it anymore, so there may be a reason why that's happened. But it's kind of... You look into the eyes of these people, and I have always maintained that there are dead eyes. They've got dead eyes. Okay,
right. Yeah.
You look into the eyes of a normal human being, and you see that soul. You know, you're looking into the soul of another, because they say that the eyes are the windows to the soul.
That's right.
But when you look into the eyes of some of these beings, through pictures or whatever,
look at Bill Gates. Look at his eyes. It's right there.
There's nothing there. You know, it's emptiness.
Yeah.
And these people, literally, if we look at AI, you know, this new thing that's coming in, of course, which is again going to be a form of control, and as you well know, Mark, through film, the truth is revealed to us through film, right. Such as RoboCop, which again is prophetic. In the fact that, you know, we are going to be controlled by robot police in the future. We already are through CCTV, of course. And, you know, there is no soul involvement in that. There is no empathy, no compassion. We lose all that. And these beings, when you look at them on the political stage, you got to think that. You got to think, well, where's your empathy? Where's your compassion? Where's your spiritual side to this? Because you never speak of spirituality. It's all about figures, facts, science, this, that, and the other. And we know that the majority of that is completely flawed, yep. and just a cover up for an agenda. You know, and. So, you know, we as humanity, we have that. So the question mark is, are these people actually human, Mark? You know?
Well, it's something I wonder. I mean, I consider them something less than human myself. I don't want to go as far as to say they're reptilians or hybrid breeds or whatever, but they certainly don't exhibit the full range of human functions and, you know, just what it is to be human. They're lacking the compassion, they're lacking the empathy, they're lacking the spirituality. There's a lot missing there. Yeah.
So it's like you say, you can delve, you know, really far down the rabbit hole if you want to. It's not always a great place to be. I've been there, and thankfully I came back and began to trust in my own judgment, you know. And I feel as though that's what we all need to do now. You can, with truth seeking, you can get so entrenched in that it actually becomes, you actually become what you are researching, and that is negative energy if you're not careful, you know. So you have to at some point reconnect with the spirit, and thankfully after a few wake-up calls I did, because I did get really far down the rabbit hole, and it's connecting with that, knowing that it's within us, and when we're conscious of that, conscious perception just changes the world. And John Lennon, he was one of those guys, one of those people that had that ability to see that and put it into his music.
Yeah.
And again, there's been many people through music who've John Denver was a great spiritual soul. He really put across the power of nature, and how nature affects us, and how it affected him through his music. And because, at the end of the day, nature, getting out there amongst the trees and whatever, is just what we need right at this time. We have to remain grounded. Grounding is so important for us now. If there's any advice I can give to people, it is get out there in nature, even if it's just a local park, or even if it's just outside on your front lawn or your back lawn or whatever. Just make contact with the earth where you can, because the earth is also helping us to raise the vibration. And this is why we've seen so many cataclysms over the past 20-odd years or so, because the earth has been changing as well. Because we cannot just limit spirituality to humanity. It's to all life on this planet, to the planet itself, and to the cosmos. Everything is energy. Everything has consciousness, and hopefully we'll become aware of that as time goes on, as we walk into this new world, really.
Yeah. And I've been right down there in the rabbit hole, wallowing among the doom and gloom myself. It doesn't help that people send me this stuff all day, which is another point that I raised in my video last weekend. My inbox is filled every single day with horror stories of what's coming in, and up to now, I've kind of got involved in that detail. I've looked at it all, but I've stopped doing that now. I'm just not looking at... it's a message to everyone out there listening. I'm not looking at videos that people send me anymore. I'm not looking at documents. I'm doing my own research, but I'm not looking at everything that comes in, because I found it was putting me in a very bad state. It was really putting me in a dense, negative, energetic state. It was affecting my mental health. It was getting me deeply depressed. I wasn't sleeping. I was getting in a state of anxiety. And I decided that if I'm to be of any use to anyone and of any service to creation and humanity, I've got to look after myself and avoid getting into those states. And if that means not looking at that type of material anymore, then that's what it's got to be. So that's a decision that I've made. I'm consciously trying to stay focused on positive outcomes and trying to manifest that through thought. And the comment I made earlier about you can want something too much, you can hope and pray for it too much and be too intense about it, reminds me of another song lyric, which I've also mentioned recently, from the Four Non-Blondes song, What's Up, where she says, and I pray, oh my God, do I pray every single day for a revolution. And that's been me. I've just had so much attached to what I've been putting out there in terms of my wishes and intent. And I came to realise that you have to put it out there and let go of it and let the universe do the rest, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that's some pretty sound advice for everyone right now. But another thing I did want to just mention is that all this great stuff that is said to be coming in, we shouldn't just be sitting back and allowing it to happen and not participating in the process that needs to take place to help it to come in. A phrase that often comes to mind to me is, God helps those who help themselves. So it's not enough just to say, oh, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be wonderful, we can just sit back and watch the show. There's still work that we all need to be doing. We need to be resisting tyranny. We need to be making it difficult for them to roll out these plans that they've got. We need to be pushing back in any ways that we can. We need to be communicating what's going on to others. So there is still work to do, rather than just sitting back and enjoying the show.
Yeah, and again, my guys have said that's exactly what will happen. We'll go into this period where we'll literally feel as though it's all a waste of time. That what we're doing is pointless.
Maybe something will happen very quickly, like literally we wake up one day and everything changes that day, and we just never saw it coming.
Yeah, because I have this feeling that that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That we're going to hear a news report or something will come out, and I look on Facebook every day on my messenger, And I'm thinking somebody's going to post one day that something's going to happen, like the arrest of Matt Hancock, or Trump actually takes the presidency again, or whatever.
Hillary Clinton goes to Guantanamo Bay or something like that. Exactly. I mean, if you think back of news of the Berlin Wall coming down in 1989, nobody would have foreseen that. It's just like you turn on your TV news one day and it's like the Berlin Wall's coming down. Yeah. How the hell did that happen,
Exactly.
It's going to have to be something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I fully agree, Mark. And when you mentioned about, yourself and how it's affected you, always, I would say, listen to what your body needs, and remember that retreat is not defeat, okay? If we need to step back for a little while, that's absolutely fine, because we need to rebuild our energies again, So the times when we can go forward in this kind of fight, if you like, or conflict, or whatever you want to call it, or let's say emancipation and awakening, and put yourself forward, and you've got that energy to do that. And it's we all need that time aside, because we need the retreat time to meditate as well. And we're getting little groups together now. We started to talk about how we would begin to build a new world. So let's imagine that we're in the ashes of a nuclear holocaust here. How the heck would we want to begin to build a new world, one that we really do, wish to live in? So it's talking about the new world, talking about what we want now, putting those thoughts out there again, the power of thought, how do we want to live that? I know there's concepts out there, there's zeitgeist, there's the Nasara Gisara business going on about the reset where everybody can be made wealthy. And there's all these concepts out there. We just need to keep talking about it as humanity, and build the picture up, for what's what we want more than anything.
Sure. Well, I think that's a pretty good point to wrap up. Awesome conversation. Do you want to let people know more about holistic well-being and how they can get involved in your activities there, and anything else you're up to that you just want to mention at this point?
Yeah, certainly, Matt. Well, firstly, thank you very much for giving me the time to deal with this today. I've also enjoyed the conversation we've had, and we will get you back to the centre. Yeah, I'm pretty pretty convinced of that and looking forward to that. So
when we return to a state of relative normality.
Absolutely. But the thing is, I've had a thought, Mark, is, well, if all the conspiracies and all the stuff goes, what we're going to talk about after that, What
we could talk about what a terrible world it would have been if we had been marched down that route.
Exactly. And look what we did, we'll be patting each other on the back.
And look what we've got instead, yeah.
But yeah, we're holistic well-being. We're in its basic sense, we are a spiritual centre, but we do like therapies, alternative therapies, but acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, Reiki, all different kinds of therapies, sound healing, of course, which is my little speciality. I obviously do personal readings for people, but it's a community. We've built up over the years that we've been doing this an amazing community of people, of like-minded souls, and that's why we came into doing this. We never came into this to be millionaires. That is not our intention at all. We have to, earn money to live, of course, and to pay the rent and everything else that goes along with it. But the basis of what we do is for the benefit of humankind. And we've been awakened, and we just want to pass that on to people, and hopefully we can help someone on their life path as well. So if anybody's ever interested in that or wants to know more about it, and some of the spiritual work we do, it's not just the readings. I do counselling, and we talk about awakenings and things like this. Please do get in touch with us. And once again, Mark, thank you very much indeed for this today. I really appreciated it.
No worries, man. Thanks for coming on today.
This is just for fun.
I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up good vibrations. I'm picking up vibrations.